is the Filmy McFilm Film Show. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.
First of all, we ended up actually watching the longest cut, which isn't the director's cut. Director's cut, I think, is like 2 hours, 15 minutes. We watched the 2.5 hour cut, which I realised halfway through, I remembered as we were watching it. Because remember there was a point about in the middle, once they were already in the mall.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, did you just notice that weird colour correction thing? And I realised that this cut, the longest cut, is actually a fan-made cut. Because there was two original versions. George A. Romero version, which he cut for the American audiences, which was like 2 hours, 15 minutes.
Right.
And then, what's that Italian fellow called again? Argento. I can't remember his first name, but he was basically a famous Italian horror filmmaker.
Is he surprise you?
I think he did. I actually can't remember. I can't remember his first name, so I don't remember that. But he he was a huge fan of his, and when he heard that he was making a Night of the Living Dead sequel, he invited him out to Italy to actually work on it and write it, and just have like a quiet space outside of his normal life, chill in Italy for a few months and write it.
Okay.
And in exchange, Argento wanted to have the rights to the Italian and European cut of the film.
Okay.
So his cut was a little bit different. It was actually shorter, and it took out a lot of like the comedic elements of it and made it more kind of a straight horror. But he didn't just cut bits out. There were certain bits that wasn't used in the Romero version that he used. So I think this fan cut spliced them both together. So anyway, that's the cut we just watched.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Because I also actually noticed, because there were certain bits where I was like, I've never seen this fan cut before. And I realised I was kind of expecting extra scenes that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. It was more that scenes that were the right length originally were now a bit too long. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I didn't know that about this fan cut thing. This is actually the only version I've ever seen.
You've only ever seen the long...
This one,
the one
right
on
here.
YouTube.
And the reason I'm saying it is, well, I just found it on YouTube, so I don't have to pay for it. So I
Fair
thought,
enough.
I'll just watch this version. And my first thoughts were, like, there's a lot of, like, baggage in this. It just goes... One sequence goes on and on and on. And it's just like... I lost a bit of interest at some points.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can clearly see, like, the fan cut is just a fan cut. It's not...
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, when people say, oh, they're about to release a never-before-seen The Beatles song.
Oh, yeah.
A song by The Beatles, and you're like, yeah, there's a reason they never released it. It's because they thought it was shit. And it always is shit when they release it.
It was okay, Declan. I would, for context, I would like to see some of the other more streamlined cuts.
I'm quite interested to see the Argento cut because I'd be interested to see it more as a straight horror and just to see it as a just to see it as well, just to see the short version.
Definitely.
But I never feel like the Romero cut is too long. It's one of those movies where, you know, certain movies, like another one for me, a long movie. God damn it! It won the Oscar instead of Goodfellas that year. Kevin Costner, Dances with Wolves.
Oh, that's like 5
Such
hours.
a long movie. But that's one of those movies, and a lot of people would probably disagree with me. But I always feel like if it was half an hour longer, I probably would hate it and be like, "This is too long." But once it finishes, even though it's 3 hours long, I always feel like I could have watched another 2 hours of it. And I always get that from the Dawn of the Dead, the Romero cut, where it's just so entertaining. There's something about it that's so cool. It hits on a lot of different things. It's very different to Night of the Living Dead, where it's more of a straight horror. It's very comical, goofy at points. It shifts gears constantly. Like the opening sequence in the newsroom sets up perfectly where it's chaos and it's delivering you a lot of information through the newscaster, but it's also setting up that it's kind of chaotic. And then it has the horrifying sequence during the SWAT raid.
Yeah,
but then it shifts gears entirely, and it kind of becomes this goofy scene with the hillbillies shooting the zombies and stuff, and it does that constantly throughout the movie. But anyway, should we kind of like run through the story, the beats of the story?
Yeah. So obviously it starts off, as you said, in the newsroom. You kind of as you said, it's chaotic, so you kind of get something is not right in the world kind of thing, but you kind of can't work it out until, now correct me if I'm wrong, because we just sat through, or basically nearly a 2.5 hour film. So as I think back at the start, let me grab my notes actually. So they're in the newsroom.
Yeah.
And I was going to call her a blonde bitch, but she does have a name.
Well, actually, for some reason, I can't remember her name. Let's just call her Fly Girl.
Let's call her Fly Girl.
As Roger calls her.
So obviously, at the start, it's kind of, they're debating. You kind of get the gist. They're basically saying people are coming back to life. Shoot them in the head. Obviously, now we've come from, as you said earlier when we were discussing, just knowing that's a classic zombie thing. So straight away we can kind of be like, oh, this is about zombies. But obviously back then, probably wouldn't have. But I think it was a good setup, all in all. Now, what I got from that is, did she turn up a station? She
so basically, she works at the station in some sort of degree. And it's kind of clever because it's setting it up that people are... I've never actually heard this before, even though I've seen the movie countless times, but someone mentions that it's 3 weeks into the outbreak. So that sets the time frame for you. It's 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Seemingly 3 weeks since the start of Night of the Living Dead. So, and you kind of see people are in different degrees or stages of accepting the reality of what's happening, because you see certain people like Flyboy comes into the scene and says, we're leaving, let's get out of here, this is ridiculous. Fly Girl is still at the point where she's morally she's righteous, she's doing the right thing. She takes off the messages that are displaying the emergency broadcast that is displaying emergency centres and addresses of emergency centres people can go to, because she knows that most of them are no longer active or overrun.
Yeah, okay.
That becomes an argument with
morality,
the head of the network or whoever he is, the guy running the show, because he wants to keep it up because he's worried people are going to start tuning off. And people are at different stages, because Flyboy's ready to go. She knows that the idea of worrying about ratings right now is ridiculous, but she's not got to the stage of realising it's over, we should just leave, there's no point even trying to do this. And the guy running the news team or broadcast or whoever he is, he's at the point where he's still worrying about ratings and stuff. So it's kind of interesting seeing everyone at their different points.
That's my point from the first. So he runs in and goes, who's turned this off? What's going on here? You don't have the authority. She says, I did. And still, even though the world is descending into chaos, it's all about, their ratings and still getting people to watch and money.
And it's about money and greed and not caring about other people over, trying to get ahead, whatever. It's just kind of recurs into the recurring theme of consumerism and greed that kind of crops up throughout the movie. So we've introduced to Fly Girl and Flyboy, and then we meet Peter and Roger in the next sequence, which is the SWAT team. And interesting about the movie as well is I always remembered that it felt like it was such... When I first watched it when I was about 12, I just randomly found it on telly on a Saturday night, and me and my brother ended up watching it. But I remember it felt like there was such a big scope to it. But when you watch it again, you realise before they get to the mall, there's basically 4 settings, 4 locations, and 4 sequences, other than if you're going to count flying over with the helicopter. But we're in the newsroom, you immediately get a sense that this is crazy, it's taking over the whole country. Then we see the SWAT team sequence, which has a really good introduction of Roger, where he's I'm not entirely sure if they're raiding the building because people are refusing to come out, or there seems to be some sort of gang in there. But anyway, they're raiding the building, and the head policeman or negotiator is with the megaphone, and he's calling out orders. And you can tell that immediately introduces Roger as someone who's obviously an experienced vet within the SWAT team, because he's calm, he's relaxed, and he's
actually
he's kind of like
cigarette, just sitting out.
but he's mocking the negotiator's orders, because he's clearly, like, he's seen this, he's done this all before, and he's trying to calm down a guy who's clearly pretty green and hasn't done this before, who then immediately it sort of establishes this nice little connection and bond between them, and then immediately shoots him in the head.
Well, what I got from the project scene number 1 is in the TV station. Now, you said this follows on from Night of the Living Dead, doesn't it? Yeah, a few weeks later. Which, I confess, I have seen twice, but not for a while. So that kind of, helped me with the context of this film.
Right.
Now, from what I understand in the TV station is they've given an order. It's gone under martial law throughout the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be set in Philadelphia. I think
it is set in Philadelphia.
Right, they mentioned it at the start. But obviously it's spread through the whole of America. Everything's in chaos. Now they've given an order that people can't occupy private residence, I believe. So from the way I saw it, in my context, is the government have given orders to these SWAT teams to just clear out private buildings.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea I got as well. I don't really know what the Puerto Rican gang was about. What did you like about the sequence, though?
Well, I got tapes of it, like inside this SWAT team, inside this unit. There was the guy that seems to be
the racist dude who's
the commander. Yeah. So straight away, you can pick up within the police institutionalized racism, where he's saying all these cuss words against the minorities and stuff like that. And let's be honest, we'll probably talk about this later on. He just wanted to go in there just to kill it. Just to kill people.
And I think see, it's hard to know with Romero sometimes, because he definitely was very liberal and progressive.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes people attach metaphors and points he's trying to make where they're not necessarily there. Because with Night of the Living Dead, where everyone always talks about how it was taking on race.
Yeah.
Because the black guy is the lead character, and it becomes even an issue.
Yeah.
He's even in there with the farmhouse with the other white characters. And Romero's come out a bunch of times and said he was never trying to take on race. The original role was written as a white character, but he just ended up casting the black guy because he preferred him.
Yeah.
And then everyone kind of inferred that. So sometimes I don't know if the sequence being in a project where everyone's predominantly black or Puerto Rican or Hispanic was a point, or it was just happened to be the setting, or I'm not sure. But it's a great sequence. Like, I love the initial. Obviously, it's the first time you see a zombie attack.
Yeah,
it's that shocking moment where it does a really good. The sequence serves a couple of points, I think, but one of them that it does a really good job of is because a lot of the time throughout the movie, it's going to be a lot of shooting zombies in their head.
Yeah.
And who were formerly people, and it's quite a disturbing thing to do if you were to do it. So they do a good way of setting up why the zombie outbreak would break out so quickly and spread so fast and be so hard to contain. And it's not just because they're running around and they're swarming people and that. It's because who would want to give up their loved one to be destroyed by the police? Who would, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it, especially when you have no context of what's happening. So you see there's that room that the racist cop breaks into just before he's killed, and that's where they've been keeping the bodies, because no one wants to hand over their dead, but they obviously can't just keep them in the room with them, so they've all thrown them into that one room, and we later find the basement. But
in the basement.
And we get the first sight of the zombies. What did you think of the zombie makeup in the movie?
It's hard to say, to be honest, Declan. If we're talking about these films made in, 1978?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've now seen so many things. Like, number one, I found it quite, even though, let's be honest, it's very outdated, it's just basic. grey makeup. I found it quite refreshing that they were actual people and not CGIs.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not CGI.
Like,
but I honestly, I love it, but I do love it in the context of being an older movie, like being a movie of its time, and also. Like, we have Night of the Living Dead, which started off the genre. Like, there were technically zombie movies, but zombie movies as we know them, Night of the Living Dead started off the genre 10 years before.
Yeah.
And then there was loads, there's loads of zombie movies were made. Italy, there was tons of zombie movies made between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. And a lot of them with better makeup and bigger, not even necessarily even much bigger budgets, but Dawn of the Dead was a pretty small budget. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was only... I think it might have been less than $1 million. Like, it was not a big budget by any stretch of the imagination. So what they do with the effects is actually amazing. But I think Tom Savini, who was the head makeup guy in it, and he was actually one of the bikers in the bikie gang later.
oh right.
He even said he regretted the type of makeup he used because he was going to kind of like... I think he was trying to make it similar to the... Night of the Living Dead grey makeup, but the problem was between the black and white and the way the cameras it was shot on.
Yeah.
Supposedly the bluishness that comes across on screen isn't what it looked like in person, and it's not really what was intended because they are very blue.
Boy, that's the first thing I thought. Like, they don't even. Some of them look like, I'm not gonna say bright blue, but extremely blue, and I was like. Is this meant to have happened? So that basically perfectly sums it up. That
I really liked as well Peter's introduction in it because Peter and Roger's introduction because Roger, you see, he attacks the racist guy. He's trying to calm things down because he's obviously losing his head, and he's doing morally he's doing the right thing, but he's in quite a manic way, which kind of sets the tone for his character throughout. But Peter calmly shoots him, and he's just. It sets the tone for both their characters. They both know what they're doing. They both can handle themselves. But Peter is just cool as a cucumber.
Totally different person.
He's always keeping his head.
Yeah.
Regardless of the situation. And they start to bond down in the basement after we meet the creepy priest with the one leg.
Yes.
And all those other zombies. And they decide to run off together. So, So then we get into the next sequence where they all meet each other.
Yeah, so... I'm trying to think again.
So we got that scene. I liked the cigarette
check my
guy.
notes.
Remember the guy who kept asking for...
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
That goofy, which is such a weird Romero thing. Just going off on a slight tangent for 1 second and we'll come back to it. But what I really like about Romero movies, and I think part of the reason why his later movies were so bad or that didn't work was that certain filmmakers, like you do get people like Scorsese or Spielberg or Kubrick or, loads of directors who, I don't know if they adapt or they just have sort of a style that suits any time period.
Yeah.
But they can just keep making movies over the decades and they're always good. They might get better, get worse just because, quality of output generally goes down in an artist. But certain directors' style fits an era, and I felt Romero was perfect for 70s, early 80s. And part of it as well was like, so he loves an obnoxious character, like he loves an over-the-top ridiculous character. And there's not too many in this one. The bikers are characters like that, but also the like the goofy cigarette guy who's just always asking for a cigarette.
That was...
He's kind of like bugging out his eyes the whole time.
It was like he was kind of like mentally had some sort of special kind of needs, like. But you saw that a lot of the time in the film. Like, I don't know, like, I can't really explain that clearly if it's just really...
It was just overacting. And it's
overacting.
Again, it's the whole... It's the interesting thing of... He went for a very different tone for this movie compared with Night of the Living Dead. Like, Night of the Living Dead was a straight horror movie. This was more... It was horror in the sense of it's got, like, it is, it's a zombie movie, it's part of the horror genre, but it's more of a horror, action, arguably even comedy movie.
There's a lot of, I would probably...
Or maybe satire is a better way of putting it.
There's a lot of comedic kind of moments in it.
Yeah.
Where you're like...
And a lot of fun moments.
What the fuck?
It's not, like, the whole movie's got a sense of fun to it. But, so we leave there, so the characters all meet each other, they get in the helicopter, they have a nice little kind of, like, get-to-know-you moment. We have that fun sequence with the hillbillies, which was actually again all volunteers because
they love being zombies.
Well, yeah, but also the hillbillies were all volunteers. I think they were local guys, and also the army was I think it was the National Reserve, and they all just agreed to show up for free because I think Romero at this point they were filming. I'm pretty sure that bit in his hometown. Okay. I'm pretty sure that was the same. It was meant to be, but I think it literally was the same location where Night of the Living Dead was set and filmed, which was his home sort of, maybe not hometown, but home area. And Romero was a bit of a legend at this point, so people were loving the idea of coming out and being a zombie or just being involved in the movie, and we're happy to do it for free. So anyway, they stop off to fill up on petrol, and we have my favourite zombie death in the film, and a lot of people's favourite zombie death in the film, where the zombie gets the top of his head cut off.
Oh, with the helicopter blades. Yeah.
Yeah, and we both loved when we were watching it how this kind of sets up for me where you start to see the Flyboy's sort of arc, the start of his arc, where you see... I always thought it was interesting how he is essentially the most essential person they know at the start.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the guy that can fly him out there. Everyone else is, God knows how they're getting out. The cigarette guy and the other policeman they met earlier got out on a boat. I'd imagine anyone trying to get out on car or on foot is going to have a really difficult time.
Messed up.
But there's no sense of like gratitude or we need this guy. Peter especially just immediately starts treating him like shit and just does not respect him at all.
Well, we should probably set up who... Yeah, Flyboy is, number one, if no one's seen the film, bit of a loser character, all in all.
Well,
but not really. But
go on, sorry.
But to set up his origin, because for some reason when I watched this 6 months ago, I just totally missed that line in
he was a weatherman.
In the projects, because I was like, I missed it I don't know what I was doing at this point, so I missed it. And then it didn't make any sense to me. I was like, who is this guy? How does he know how to fly a helicopter? Like,
it's a genius thing because just to have it as a weatherman. But he, I actually think it's interesting to say you said loser character, because I actually think part of what sets his arc off here, and sorry, I'll let you say the thing in a second, but I think the fact that being a weatherman, you're not a movie star, but you are, people would recognise you, you'd be a well-paid job, you get recognised in the street, you'd kind of be a minor celebrity, big deal. And that's what he would have been in his former life before everything starts falling apart. And none of that matters anymore. And now, he can fly, he's Flyboy, but all of a sudden he's not a big deal, and it feels like a very big ego gets a real big squashing in the next sequence, especially.
But the thing that makes me laugh is he says that he's friends with... he goes, I've basically got a friend who's got a helicopter can fly. How do they fucking know each other? A SWAT team guy and imagine going to the pub. Declan, how was work in the office? Yeah, it was all right. How was work on the helicopter?
Yeah.
What a SWAT team.
Those two very interesting jobs to know each other.
How do they know each other?
It is true.
Unless there was like a hostage situation at his TV studio.
Two very, in a zombie apocalypse, two very useful jobs to have. Like, what would we be like?
Oh, we'd be useless.
You can recruit, we'd be, both work in an office.
Office worker and well, no, you might be alright because you were a TV scheduler, so you might be at that.
Again, though,
TV
once the shit hits the fan, useless. So anyway, go.
So he's so... What scene do we get to? So...
Well, I mean, we're at the sequence where... We can move on from that. We can get straight to the mall if you want. I was just going to say, before we move on to the mall, I was just going to say, you see the start of that arc of Flyboy's sort of ego getting crushed and how it affects things later on and his behaviour. It affects his behaviour later on is when he's trying to shoot the zombies and he's a useless shot.
Missing them,
And Roger keeps running over and kind of like tapping his gun off, and it's nearly like a dismissive kind of like dad patting his son on the top of the head, just leave it to me and Peter. And Peter even points a gun at him at one point after he nearly shot Peter when he didn't see him in front of a zombie.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so we get to the mall.
And you kind of, in that scene, I know that you saw it as well, you kind of see little traits of, I'm going to call her the blonde girl.
Yeah?
Again.
All right.
Of her being a bit, how can I say this? Annoying.
Yeah.
Passive aggressive. Like when that guy is just asking for
asking for a cigarette,
everyone says no, and then all of a sudden when the helicopter's sort of going to fly off, he's gone. She gets out and lights one. Now I believe that the other three don't have any, because I'm just thinking, did I see any of them?
Never see any of them smoke.
I think I saw the other one smoke. Peter, is it, smoking a cigar?
Maybe.
But I never saw any else of them smoking a cigarette. So I think it just kind of set it up for like later on in the movie.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, one thing I noticed this time and the last time I watched it is I used to not like a character much as well, and I used to not like Flyboy, and I kind of like him. Flyboy's still annoying, but I like him more as characters the more times I've watched it, and.
Yeah.
With the blonde woman, we really should know her name. With Fly Girl, I find that it's less that I think she's more she just goes cold, and like she doesn't really. If you look at Roger and Flyboy, their behaviour, they're the 2 out of the 4 that die, and it's
true.
Both it's because of dumb behaviour. One is arrogance, where we'll get to it later more in detail.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know, Roger dies because of his arrogance and just being a bit manic and a bit too reckless and brave, and Flyboy dies because of his ego and because of Whereas Peter and Flygirl never really have that. They're always pretty cold, even down to like when Flyboy later proposes to her, and she's just like, "Nah, it's not real. Like this isn't real. Like it wouldn't be real. I don't want to do it." And also, he's been a pussy at that point for too long.
Yeah,
she doesn't like him anymore. But they're both logical and cold, and just they're survivors. And I feel like that's kind of where sometimes she comes off as a bit of a bitch. I feel like it's more the circumstances.
Well, yeah, and to be honest, thinking about it, just had a thought now. The whole dynamic is hard enough as it is, being in an apocalypse, but she's the only girl in the whole group.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if it was us with like 3-4 girls, like on your own. I would struggle with that. To be honest,
it's like when you see.
I'd be like, oh god.
It's like when you see 2 parents and they either have like 5 boys or 4 girls, and you're like.
The dad's like,
whoever's the odd one out in that family, it's always just like
the mum's like, this is the greatest family ever, and the dad's just like,
just slowly
fucking have a son.
Up.
Yeah.
The mum never gets anything on the telly other than football.
Yeah.
But
right.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've actually thought about that.
But then we get to the place where the whole rest of the film is basically set, the mall,
which was owned by a good friend of George Romero.
Oh, okay.
And that's where he initially got the idea for doing it, because he actually didn't want to do a Night of the Living Dead sequel for a long time. But anyway, so we get to the mall and they land on top.
The roof, yeah.
And pretty quickly they get the idea. They go into the mall and they start... Oh, hello! Alright, so we just got up to where the mall is.
So the 4 musketeers, I'm going to call them, have landed in the mall with their helicopter. No, they take about 20 minutes trying to find a way in, basically. Like, how are we going to get in?
So they get in the top, they break in, they're chilling for about 5 minutes in that room with all the boxes before Peter says to... actually, Flyboy's getting some sleep, because we saw he was like starting to loot. He was falling asleep at the steering wheel of the helicopter, which was dodgy.
And no one gave a shit.
No one seemed to care. They just casually slapped the back of his head.
Yeah.
Didn't even like nicely wake him up either. Again,
know.
Peter just immediately starts treating him like a bitch for some reason. But so Flyboy's getting some sleep, and Peter and Roger kind of give each other this wry little look, and they just say like, "Fuck it, let's go down there." So they break into the actual.
He smashes a window.
Mall, and this whole sequence becomes like so. This whole segment of the movie becomes so like silly and fun for some reason. I really like it. I just like how they've officially become best mates now, and they're running around like little toddlers. Like, it kind of reminded me of, remember in Step Brothers where Will Ferrell says, "Did we just become?" Or is it John C. Reilly says, "Did we just become best friends?"
Yeah,
just kind of like start running about together, having fun, and they start taking out the zombies in the mall, and they start going shopping, and.
Well, my first question is...
What?
This all happened, Declan, but I wonder... It's kind of interesting how the locations are never revealed to you. Like, if Fly Guy's falling asleep, how far have they been flying? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like it's that kind of movie logic where... You know they start in Philadelphia, but beyond that... There's kind of like, especially in the sort of movie universe... all movie universe, I don't mean this movie's universe, there's a kind of sense that once you leave the major cities, there's basically an unlimited number of small towns and little rural locations in America where any number of like like Gremlins takes place in generic small town, Critters takes place in generic small town. It's just, so I get the feeling like it's just that mall could have been in a totally different part of America. Probably was.
Let's not even bring up Tremors, fucking hell.
Yeah, exactly. So I just got the feeling that there was no real sense of worrying about how far they'd actually travelled or where they actually were.
Oh, yeah. So they get into the mall. They're now like kind of besties kind of thing, like running around
having fun.
Question for you, bit off topic. The zombie apocalypse happens in here, where we live in London.
All right.
You're stuck in Brent Cross. What's the first thing that you start going around nicking?
Okay. So it's all cordoned off. Are there zombies inside?
No, let's say hypothetically, Declan.
Oh, there's zombies in Brent Cross.
Right,
it's the same setup as when they arrive. So I'm in Brent Cross, on the roof. What do I first go for?
But the premise of my question is that you're 100% going to survive it, get out of the mall, and you get to keep everything that you've nicked.
Okay.
Going PS5.
PS5.
No electric. You got to pass.
See, Joe, what's annoying is not even the. I basically do just have to go what I would want if it wasn't the apocalypse, because there's not going to be a gun store. It's Brent Cross.
Oh
no. Maybe I'd go to.
It's got John Lewis.
Would there be like a novelty knife store in Brent Cross?
Maybe.
What about, is there like a Forbidden Planet section? Would there at least be like fake samurai swords or something?
You could, to be honest, Declan, it's got a John Lewis.
It's got a John Lewis.
And John Lewis have loads of knives. They have a whole cooking section. Isn't it?
Alright,
you can find knives in there.
I'd go to the cooking section. I'd go to like a hiking thing and get like some camo sort of gear and like tents.
Yeah, that's banging.
And even then, they'd have like that mountain climbing things where it's basically like a mini pickaxe.
Oh yeah.
So I'd try and scavenge decent little weapons. I'd scavenge unnecessary items like that little headlamp torch and stuff just for the fuck of it.
Oh yeah. Indiana Jones kind of,
because everything I want to nick, I would want if it wasn't the apocalypse.
Well, let's look at it. You're not.
What would you nick?
You're not really going to like... To be honest, Declan, it doesn't really matter about nice clothes anymore. You're not trying to impress someone. True. So you might as well just... Well, like you, like weather-resistant clothing. You don't know where you're going to be going, like camping tents.
Well, all right, let's say we're staying there, though. We're doing it like they do in the movie. Right. So you're staying in a room...
Mate.
In the roof.
PS5.
Somewhere. So you get a PS5.
Yeah, for the little inside the room, like a bit of FIFA going on. Obviously.
But are they dicks now? Do they actually allow you to play unless you get an internet connection?
Oh, that's a good question. Because it's a zombie.
And that's one thing also.
The transfer.
I was always a little bit like, and you don't want to like. I'm never a person who pokes holes at like, it ruins the movie because this doesn't make sense. But I was a little bit like, how's the power still on?
That is.
But I don't care. Like, it no way takes me out of the movie as a plot hole, but I just...
But then again, every place they go to has power. Like, the boat docks had lights.
I mean, I suppose it is very recently, but then it feels like once they're in the mall, getting back to the movie now, it feels like... So they have the whole sequence where they kill all the zombies inside and shut them all out. And then they kind of just actually have the run of the mall. And
Yeah.
And they kind of start, they start like building nearly a little home up there. And you get the feeling that months, maybe not months, but I'd say at least a month or a couple of weeks at the minimum.
No, I think quite a while had passed because they was doing...
Definitely from when Roger...
Definitely
once Roger dies, you get the feeling a lot of time passes.
Yeah.
Which, going back, let's not glaze over that, because Roger, he's my favourite character in the whole movie. And I remember the first time I watched it when he gets bitten. And he's actually in the movie a lot longer than I remembered after he gets bitten, before he turns. But I remember being so gutted when he got bitten, because he was my favourite character.
I think he's a cool, funny guy, but in the long run, for people like Peter, he's going to cause problems, or he's going to do something mad, and that is why he got bitten.
Yeah, he was just acting bizarrely reckless in the... I love how bonkers he goes in the final sequence.
Or something.
he just sort of speaking differently. So he keeps saying, he's being like, perfect baby. He keeps calling him baby.
It was like he found a stash of like coke in like a pharmacy or something.
Yeah, and he's
like,
if it didn't fit the rest of the movie, you'd say it was like bad acting. But it does. It's just perfect for the movie. But he turns into like a weird blaxploitation kind of creepy cop. Like he becomes really weird. But I love it, and I love the whole sequence. And I love the whole sequence where after he's bit, where he's kind of getting pushed around on a wheelbarrow, and he helps him still sort out getting rid of all the zombies and blocking off the entrances.
But what makes me laugh as well, another little plot hole. You're in a fucking mall. It's 1978. You telling me that you don't have one disabled customer in the whole.
That's a really
there
good
must
point.
be a wheelchair. What is going on here?
Yeah, I don't actually know what if that would have been as much of a thing. I mean, I guess they would probably have a wheelchair somewhere.
Because when was the Vietnam War? Going off subjects.
I think it would have just about ended.
There would have been loads of
That's true.
there would have been
that's kind of a good point.
Shit.
Because one thing you notice, there's 2 zombie children in the whole movie, and I think all 3 of the movies. Actually, no, sorry. There's the zombie child in Night of the Living Dead, but you never really see kids, which is kind of understandable because I guess it's just seen as a bit tasteless
to shoot. Yeah.
But you never see disabled zombies, really, do you?
Well, I'm trying to think back, Declan. Let's rewind back a bit to the start when in the projects. The first zombie that we see was on the floor, wasn't he? I don't think he had any legs.
Yeah, but I think that was more.
I bit him off.
Yeah, I think that was more of a case of
he's not a Vietnam vet.
Yeah, you never know.
It's in the project.
That is a good point, actually. Yeah. But yeah, so he's getting wheeled up around in his little wheelbarrow, still helping him out. They take advantage of that car, which was in the mall, and they start driving it around. And this is what I mean. I just remember watching it as a kid and just being like, this just looks like fun. Like, they made that segment of the zombie apocalypse just seemed like fun. Like, it just seemed like he took the sometimes a movie has a good premise. What's the movie that has a good premise but doesn't use it right? Like, doesn't make the most of it.
That's a very good...
Can't think of one, fair enough, but it just feels like he took the premise of it's a zombie apocalypse, they hide out in a mall, and they squeezed every last drop of good idea out. Like, everything's even using, you always see I've never been to the mall in America, but you always see in movies and TV shows, there'll be a car. I think it's always a car that you could win.
There's a fucking ice skating rink in it.
Yeah, but even just using that, and apparently they begged the owner of the mall and the people to let them use the car, and I'm pretty sure they ended up crashing it and denting it, and they had to pay for it and all sorts of things. But yeah, so they're driving around, and then they ultimately resolve that. They get all the zombies out, kill them all, hide them in the place where they keep the food, which I never really liked. I never really understood that. You would never do that.
Well, why are they putting him? Why are they putting him in the? If they've killed him already, why do they have to freeze him?
Well,
because
guess
they're not gonna. No, if they're re-dead again, they might rot.
No, they are gonna rot, but don't keep them with the food.
It's gonna stink.
Well, you wouldn't keep them with the food. It's the main point. Yeah. Throw them in the ice rink.
That's a good
if you're gonna do something.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Which again, how is that still cold? But yeah, that I just always found that again. Like I don't like going off on another tangent, but I don't know about you, but I don't care about plot holes. It never takes me out of the movie. I didn't care at all, but it was just one thing when I was watching it where I was just like, why would you do that?
No, I think, to be honest, has anyone ever said to anyone, this movie was good, but I don't recommend seeing it because of all the plot holes? I don't think that's ever happened.
Well, it depends what kind, the only thing that will ever take me out, well, actually, probably a lot of things if I really start thinking about it, but something that will take me out of a movie is when, when you have bad writing, you can see bad writing when characters just suddenly start either making really stupid decisions or acting different to how they've acted the whole way through the movie. And you can tell it's the writer just needs the plot to move from A to B at this moment, and it's just an easy way of making it happen. That will take me out of the movie. But when it's things like, why is electricity still on? Or how did they travel this far in that length of time? They couldn't have actually travelled that distance unless they were driving really far. Those sort of things. I don't give a shit.
But I'm sure there's people in the world who are actually like that, though. Like, they're just like...
Yeah, it's fair enough. You can never... weird things take you out of the movie sometimes. Yeah, but it's kind of like, how sometimes... say... one thing I always hate is when... Say it's I don't know, it's a zombie movie. And then one of the characters jumps, I don't know, does something that takes you out of it because, I don't know, he I don't know, jumps for a helicopter that's 20 foot up. And you could never make that jump. Yeah. But then someone goes, well, it's a zombie movie, it's not realistic. And you're like, but no, you have the rules of whatever is happening in the movie that doesn't happen in real life. But then you can't just defy physics or... You got to kind of keep it in the realm. What makes it fun, what makes a horror movie fun, if it's playing it straight, is that it takes something that is fantastical but makes it feel plausible.
Yeah, but just on the story of plot holes, we'll get to the ending in a bit. But hang on, Declan, I've just thought of a really weird one.
In this movie?
Yeah. We only ever see that woman... Do we ever get to see Fly Girl getting taught how to use the helicopter?
Yeah, in one
tiny bit.
Or you see it in one tiny bit that implies it's been going on for a while.
They could have done a fucking Rocky Star montage.
What, her running up the steps of the mall?
It just focuses into the lever, her just slowly...
Cracking eggs
lifting up logs.
But I need a montage.
By the time it gets to the end, which we'll discuss later... And by the way, I don't think you would have a lot of time to be doing fly-arounds with the helicopter.
Yeah, well, again, it's the thing where you could start analysing, being where they're getting this fuel from.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Where's that coming from?
But again, it kind of, they sell it. Do you know what I mean? As a narrative and how it flows together, you believe it. I feel like if you don't realise a plot hole until you've watched the movie 10 times and you actually take an hour to talk about it with someone, then it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It only really matters if it actually takes you out of the movie in the moment.
Yeah. No, it just came into my head. I was like, hang on.
That is true. The fuel thing is a good point. And also, do you remember we both realised and this is more probably
things the biggest point.
This is probably more us just being dumb and not realising what's going on. But the sequence where Fly Girl's on the roof, Flyboy's flying the helicopter, and Roger and Peter are in two separate trucks. And I get that the point of the mission is they're blocking off the entrances. But I don't get why they drive somewhere else. And why Flyboy's flying over them.
They should have driven around... if they're going to drive around somewhere else, they should have just run over about 100 zombies.
That's true. We noticed that as well. But where are they? Why are they driving somewhere else to do?
I don't know.
They get out. And it's definitely. I'm not saying it's a plot. I'm saying I'm too dumb to understand what's going on. But I've watched this movie 20 times. I always pay attention to the sequence because it's one of my favourite sequences in the whole movie, and I just never get why they drive off and then drive back.
I don't get what Flyboy is doing in the helicopter.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a radio.
Got a radio.
He's an eye in the sky, but when he needs to tell him something, he has to hover and try and do hand signals out the window.
But then later on, I noticed later in the film that they get walkie-talkies. Like, if you're gonna fucking get a walkie-talkie, why didn't you do it before the mission?
To be fair though, that was at the point in the movie where they had an electric flosser, probably. They had kitted out the whole room and it looked like someone's furnished living room. It was beautiful.
To be honest, that would be actually, I'm going back to my Brent Cross question. That's one of the first things that I would source, because you got to think about it.
Radio, yeah, that makes sense.
You got to think about it. Number one, that this is in 1978, so they don't have phones. But if this happened now, I assume that all the phone networks would go down, more or less straight away. Because who's going to be using phones unless they're in a totally different country?
Well, also, I think... I don't know. That's one of those interesting things where...
everything would be fucked.
Yeah, see, things like that you can research, probably, and it's probably not that difficult to, get a research team to actually, find out, okay, how quickly would the grid go off if blah, blah, blah? Does it stay on is it designed to stay on for any amount of time? Blah, blah, blah. The things you couldn't research, do you like my blah, blah, blah? The things you couldn't research is, or predict necessarily is, human nature. So that's why it was quite interesting during this whole pandemic, seeing how how people reacted to it and how that changed over time. But anyway, I don't want to get into COVID.
I did notice that none of these zombies were wearing their mask inside the shopping centre.
That's very true, yeah.
This is poor pandemic management. Sorry, we're off on a tangent again.
So they're in the mall, they have their happy life. Before we get onto the whole biker gang thing, one thing I did like was once, a lot of people kind of don't like this part of the movie, but once they shut out the zombies and the time between they shut out the zombies and the biker gang showing up, it's kind of there's no zombies and it's kind of just living. And I love that whole bit because I love when Roger, I love the days before Roger dies where they just seem to mess about. They're playing arcades, they're messing around with him, they seem to try and give him a fun time. I love just before he dies when he says to Peter, I'm going to try to not come back as one, but if I do, shoot him. Just the idea of him being how are you going to try, what are you going to do? And then he dies, and I love the whole, Peter seems to really warm to Flyboy after treating him like shit.
Well,
and
that's what I'm thinking, the rationale, Declan, that they might have been in by this point for a considerable amount of time. Because thinking about
I feel like maybe 2 months max is what I kind of got.
They go to the DIY shop, they get loads of tools and build shit.
Because they actually build, do you remember they build a fake plaster wall?
Yeah,
to cover up the door.
But, 2 months doesn't sound like a lot to us, but we're not in a zombie apocalypse, so that would be... most people would be dead within that time frame, do you know what I mean? A lot of people wouldn't...
I really love the radio broadcast or the TV broadcast that kind of played throughout.
Yes, yeah.
Because they just felt chaotic and bizarre and... because usually in end-of-the-world movies or zombie movies, they're always quite calm, like, remember in Shaun of the Dead, as an example,
yeah.
where they have that guy from Channel 4, I can't remember his name, but...
Oh, Jon Snow.
Yeah, I don't think it's Jon Snow, but it's someone anyway on Channel 4.
You must take off.
Yeah, it's always very
this
relaxed.
Is Britain,
and this was
America.
just people arguing. Like, there's the guy with the eye patch who just keeps shouting dummies at the audience, and I loved all that. But anyway, so that all goes along. Flyboy tries to propose, and she's like, "Nah, not having
Poor
it."
Flyboy, man.
Well, I actually, alright, coming back to earlier, because I was talking at the beginning how I loved, the more I've watched it, the more I love his character, and you can kind of see that he was a big shot Flyboy before, he was a big deal, he was a weatherman, like, local minor celebrity.
Yeah.
And now in this world, he's basically not worth shit other than the fact that he can fly the helicopter, which I think is a big deal, and I'd be grateful, but no one else seems to give a shit. And you even see it at one point when Fly Girl says she wants to learn how to fly the helicopter.
Yeah.
He pulls a face like he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And you can see like he's thinking like, I can't shoot. Like, no one really respects me. This is my one thing I can contribute. And you can see like it hits his ego and he doesn't like it. And he comes around to it. And as Peter comes to respect him and he learns to shoot, he kind of comes into his own a lot more. Him and Peter start to get on. And
do you think this is sort of character depth, that we never really got into? We didn't know their previous, before the zombie apocalypse or whatever that happened in Night of the Living Dead. Do you think Fly Girl only like went out with Fly Boy just because he's like a big shot at a television station?
No, I don't really
They
get
seem
that
to hate
impression.
each other.
They seem to not like each other from the get-go. But to be fair, like, watching it, the early scenes, she's quite, like, he says we need to get out, and she's like, okay, like, she's going along with him.
Yeah,
She
true.
seems to respect him at the start. In that first sequence, by when they're still escaping, when they're picking up fuel, can't speak, fuel for the helicopter, they're quite affectionate with each other after they have that encounter, just before, with the zombies, just before Peter shows up. But I feel like she respects him less and less as the movie goes on, and that's what starts to create And I don't even think it's down to the fact that he's not good with a weapon. He's not useful in that way. I don't think it's that. I think it's more his inability to accept his role in the group and his obvious like problems of his ego and his coming out. I think that is what makes her respect him less and less.
To be honest.
And she kind of like, it never really goes beyond even hinting at it, but she definitely starts to fancy Peter.
Oh yeah, oh no, we'll get to that at the end.
Right.
But I've been like, fuck you, bitch, I can fly a helicopter.
Yeah, which is why I don't really get why he
cool,
never...
That's well
I don't... Like, he is kind of an unlikable character. Like, he pouts constantly. He's always kind of miserable. He seems to not be happy that Peter's even shows up at the start, because obviously he doesn't know Peter.
Maybe
none of them know Peter. They all know each other.
She's gonna go out with...
Yeah, and it kind of hints that she's friendly to him. Hints that they like each other. But I do think, like, if he say was who he is, but had the mindset of Fly Girl and the mindset of Peter, where he's like, I have my skills, I'm not worried about how I'm perceived, I'm not worried about this, like, that is all irrelevant to the scale of what's happening right now. Let's just survive, and just, if he just didn't have an ego about everything, she wouldn't have lost that respect for him, I don't think.
Let's get it straight, like, Peter's the
Don.
Yeah, he's the Don. He's like 6'5".
Yeah, he's huge.
He's like the size of this. I know we're not on camera. He's like the size of this ceiling, and he's just a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah, and he's just cool. Like, he never.
He's cool as fuck.
He never loses his cool. He never loses his head. He never does something that isn't because that isn't in servitude to him and everyone else surviving.
Yeah.
He never really makes a decision that's based on anything other than this will help us live. And he's quite a selfless character. Like, you know, he stays with Pete. He stays with Roger till he dies. And then he's the one who shoots him.
Yeah.
He, you know, when just before Flyboy proposes, he helps him with the dinner and then leads him to it, and he's just.
You can tell he's still got his.
He's also a bit of a dick. Like, he's not an annoyingly. He's not like a faultless character. But he's pretty kind of close to it.
You can kind of look. I reckon in this situation, it will be very easy to lose your humanity. You'd be like, I'm just going all out for myself. But when I kind of noticed that it was still evident in Peter, is when he shoots those two kids. You can kind of see it in his eyes, like that. He was like that really messed him up. So that seems to me that.
And even when when he embarrasses Flyboy a few moments later.
Oh yeah.
But it's only to make a point of like, you can't, like, you nearly shot me, you can't do that.
Oh yeah.
He's actually very restrained and calm as he does it.
Let's be honest, like, if you're in a zombie apocalypse and some idiot nearly shot you, there's no rules. I'd just be like,
yeah, so the biker gang shows up, and I this is just another great idea that I just feel like wouldn't occur to 99% of people that would sit down to write a zombie movie, like having a biker gang show up who are just roaming around. And I always wanted a sequel or a spin-off movie that just followed the biker gang around, because the idea of them like the idea of them always on the road, surviving on the road, and like their little like virtually like Peter says it, like that's an army bowling about, and just seeing what that would have been like imagine Easy Rider with zombies. Like, it would have been nuts, like,
to be honest,
him smoking weed and just going crazy and doing drugs and getting into fights and raiding people, like following essentially like a group of bad guys.
There's a really good PS4 game off subject again called Dave's Gone, where you're in a biker gang, but you're still fighting the other biker gangs, but it's zombies.
It must be inspired by that.
So you're just like, it's quite interesting because you got to like do up your bike, and then you pick up like little cans of fuel, and then you run out of fuel after a while, so you got to keep refueling. So it's got really cool things like that.
Yeah, that's got to be.
But it just reminded me of that. But the thing that I thought about that biker gang is like, they've done all this work, like to get rid of all the zombies and like to do up them all to their liking, and then someone just comes along and tries to take it all away, and like it's like it just sums it up. In these sort of situations, the strengths are in numbers, basically. There's only 4 of them. No, 3, because what's his name's already dead, isn't he? By the time
Roger,
yeah. So there's 3 of them. Imagine you've done all that stuff, Declan, like doing them all up, like clearing out the zombies from when you first came, and like 100 people just turn up and like, I want this. You'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Well, you probably would be, but you'd also be like, oh, they're just taking the stuff. No problem, because they could come along, kill both of you, torture you.
Oh, let them take
rape Fly Girl in front of you. You know, it could be a million times worse. But that's interesting you make that whole point, because, again, going back to Flyboy, he says, it becomes pretty clear, like, they're not really there for them. They're going to come in, they're not even coming to the second floor. They're just coming in to raid, steal stuff, and then they're going to go. Obviously, it's bad because the zombies are getting in, whatever, but they can all recover.
Yeah, they probably could fix that.
But Flyboy says to himself something along the lines of, "It was ours, we claimed it." Something like that. Yeah. And then he starts taking pot shots at him, and that's when that's what ends up leading to his demise and leading to him becoming a zombie. The best zombie in the whole movie, I think, like the way he walks and does that creepy little thing with his leg. But that's what ends up leading to them having to abandon the whole mall. And again, it's down to people causing their own problem. Like anyone, the only people that survive are the people that don't make stupid choices out of their own character flaws.
Yeah, but going back to our previous point, it's would you say a metaphor on general arrogance and communalism.
Consumerism.
Not communism.
Communism. Yeah, I think that's
still the whole...
It's well noted that is... And I kind of like that, because sometimes symbolism and metaphors in movies can be annoying, but I nearly feel like they're less annoying when they're so obvious. Do you know what I mean? They don't feel pretentious when they're pretty blatant in what he's doing, but also it's in the background. It is a great movie. If the metaphor is the main point, then usually it's kind of a shit movie, in my opinion.
That's a good subject. Metaphors in movies.
But in this, it comes up, but it never comes up. It comes up in a way where you can enjoy after the fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, it's a point, and even when the biker gang come in and they start ripping rings off a zombie, and it's
and dead woman
earlier in the movie when they go for a cash register and Peter says he grabs a load of cash and he says oh, you never know. And it's they're still thinking about that, even though, what does it matter anymore? Who cares?
Well, the zombies... There's a couple of other things as well. The zombies keep coming back to the mall when they're going back to populated areas. Even though they're zombies, they just do what they know, basically. And the other thing that I found quite interesting is one of the zombies, and I think they even mentioned it in a TV debate later on, he kind of used a sort of crowbar to break the window.
Yeah, it's funny, sorry, go on.
So, it leads me to kind of think, maybe they're not as stupid as we, think.
Well, the zombies in George Romero movies...
Oh, right.
Do, because, in the original Night of the Living Dead, where it became the set thing of, until obviously years later, where you had the fast running zombies that became popularized by 28 Days Later, but zombies generally, they move slow, and the reason for that is if you watch Night of the Living Dead, the original, again, some of the zombies don't move slow. In fact, the very first zombie that shows up on screen moves really fast and runs. He uses a rock at one point to smash a window, and the only reason for that originally was because the majority of them, the makeup would come off if they moved too fast.
Right.
But then,
right.
that became
that
became the motif of what zombies do. I much prefer. I like the modern zombie movies, but I much prefer the slow moving zombies.
Yeah,
to me, that is.
So would I.
yeah, exactly.
I just feel dick, do I need to run? At least they're walking slow, and then all of a sudden, fuck, he's running.
But yeah, in and the daughter zombie actually uses a spade to stab someone, and that he obviously, the idea of what, in fact, it was someone else during writing it. He didn't really know what the zombies were supposed to do once they caught humans, and it was someone else's idea to George Romero that maybe they eat the humans, maybe they eat flesh.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think of what we think is such an obvious thing of what a zombie is. Was a lot of it was accidental, and then a lot of it then evolved from there.
That is weird.
You see him kind of use tools, but not really. I feel like part of the reason why Dawn of the Dead is considered the granddaddy of all zombie movies. Firstly, is because, in my opinion, it is the best one. It's just never been bettered. But also, it was the first movie to truly kind of set in stone the rules of zombies.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like he understood it more as well by this point. And partly that'd be because although a lot of the ideas from Night of the Living Dead were circumstantial, the makeup falling off was the reason they moved so slow, and he didn't even initially have the idea that they would, consume the dead. Because that inspired a bunch of other, copycat movies, movies that then kind of set in stone, even before he made Dawn of the Dead, what the zombie genre is and kind of the motifs of it.
Well, I feel like, number one, we're in 2021 now. How many zombie films do you think has ever been made?
What, in total around the world? I mean, thousands?
Thousands.
Alright, here's another question then, a different sort of question.
Yeah.
How many good ones?
Are you talking...
Just a good zombie movie.
Are you talking about... So it could be like, possibly it's about zombies, but it can also be a comedy or a proper horror.
And also like 28 Days Later.
Obviously,
they're technically not zombies, but the zombie genre.
You got to say Shaun of the Dead's up there. It's a great film.
I'd say do you know what? When you actually go through the list, there's so many of them, but there's not that many good ones.
28 Days Later.
28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later to a lesser extent. It's
decent.
Yeah, decent's fine. I'm talking about just like a good zombie movie. For the amount, there's probably like 30 zombie movies made a year, and none of them will be good most of the time.
I was about to say Dog Soldiers, but it's werewolves.
Yeah. But anyway, so going back to the movie, yeah. So it ends. You know what the original ending was supposed to be?
No.
So originally in the script, so obviously you have Flyboy becomes a zombie. Him again, kind of like zombies seem to have some sort of memories or small recollection of what they used to do. So he, as a result of that, leads the other zombies up their little secret passage up to where they're hiding.
Up the ladder.
And that's how the zombies arrive, and that's why they have to escape. Peter doesn't want to do it anymore, so he's going to stay behind while Fly Girl goes up to fly off, and he's going to shoot himself. Now, in the end, he doesn't shoot himself, and that sort of like crazy A-Team music kicks in, and he runs up and he's like drop kicking zombies out of the way. He's like spinning around,
Roadhouse,
judo shots, like Austin Powers.
Yeah,
and,
judo chop.
And he jumps in the helicopter and they fly away. Original ending was he just does shoot himself, and then Fly Girl hears it, and while the blades are going, she just puts her head up into the blade and chops her own head off.
Right.
But I think it was even George Romero's wife just said, no, that's too depressing. Why, like...
But why would she do that if she could just also shoot herself? She'd be like, fuck it. Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if it actually ended like that?
I would be flabbergasted.
Yeah, and also I think it would be a worse ending. Like, I like the ending where they get in, they fly off. It is hopeless anyway. They barely have fuel, and they're going to be fucked.
To be honest, I think that's kind of a little bit of a throwaway comment on the whole wasting of fuel situation. Because Peter's like...
Yeah, that's a good point. If they weren't
Peter's
fucking
like,
about the fuel.
How much fuel do we have left? And then she's like, not much. Imagine if they just flew off and it ran out and it just fucking exploded.
Yeah. Well, I reckon they had more than that, but...
Well, you never know.
Yeah. Another thing is, why can't they just stay in the helicopter? Like, sometimes it was a bit... And all zombie movies are like this, and they kind of... How easily zombies can get into things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just decided of whether the writer wants them to break in at that point or not. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes they seem to be able to just smash through a wall, and other times...
Yeah, they can smash through what I assume is a concrete wall.
Nah, I don't know about that.
Right,
But like a drywall or a door, definitely.
Right,
like a wooden or a locked door, they can seem to get...
So they can do that. Obviously, the shutters being down, I don't think they'd be able to get through shutters.
Oh, see, I think they would. Do you remember, like, during the riots, like, people get through...
And they had smoked about 100 spliffs.
Yeah.
They're basically the same as them.
I don't know. I just find it funny.
But then again, Declan, like, there's about 20 of them on glass, all going like that, and it doesn't break.
Yeah.
It's just like we've got an interesting scene here, and at the moment we don't want A, B, and C to die, so they're going to survive for this scene. So their little punches aren't going to be hard enough, but later on they are.
So what do you reckon? What do you reckon happened to them after they left? Anyway, after the credits.
I reckon
they start fucking.
Fucking. The baby's born.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the baby.
It's Peter.
And then it was Peter.
Yeah. It comes out. Fuck you, fly boy. The whole time. No, I reckon they just maybe fly to maybe just in the middle of nowhere or something.
Yeah.
Like,
it just rolls on and on. They probably die.
They probably die at some point, but
Yeah.
I reckon Pete would die from like old age because he's massive and huge.
Really? You think he?
Yeah,
so he dies
mate,
40 years later. So when
reckon
you said you
he's
think they die, you meant like of old age 30 years later. They'd probably be about now. Actually, he's probably. So
I would give Peter a good 10 years from that point. Don't know about that blonde lady, Fly Girl.
Yeah.
She was just a bit annoying. Once you get rid of her, I reckon
I
Pete
don't
would
really
have
see
been
anyone surviving alone. I think you're with a group or a couple of people.
Yeah, but I reckon Pete would have been clever. He would have been like, teach me how to
if you
fly
put
this
money, like
helicopter."
if you put money at the start of the movie on one of the four living, it's Peter, probably Peter or Roger.
No, I reckon Peter would have just been like, they would have gone out. Fly Girl would have been nagging him, and he's just like, for fuck's sake, like, getting really pissed off, like, canned tomatoes for dinner again. Like, can't we have something different? Like those little couple arguments that have started, and he would have been like, can you teach me how to use the helicopter?
Yeah, I wonder if that would have happened as well. Would she have had the same problem?
And then he would have just been like, fuck this. And then just flew off, like, kind of thing.
So what do you rate the movie anyway?
I really liked it. Obviously, I have seen it before. I don't know if this makes the conversation any different. I've never seen this cut. I just any other cut. I just assumed it was the only one.
I definitely liked this cut the least. It was too baggy.
Right. Okay.
The original cut is perfect. I haven't seen the Argento cut. I'll check it out someday, but I'm not that bothered.
It's a really good film. Obviously a groundbreaking film. It's kind of like, I don't know what your thoughts are. It's kind of like hard to watch now because it
hard
seems
to watch.
In the respect of we're so used to like special effects now. And like, if we're gonna use zombie, let me use a modern day like Zack Snyder's, what was it, Day of the Dead or whatever.
Dawn of the Dead remake, actually.
Or we could have used that as well.
Oh, so did you mean
the Netflix one when it's in Vegas?
What was that called? Army of the Dead.
That's it. It's kind of like, you know that obviously the effects are fake, like the zombie tiger.
Yeah.
But I did kind of find it kind of like difficult to watch just with the basic makeup and like.
Are you saying Dawn of the Dead that we're talking about?
Yeah,
today?
I'm saying Dawn of the Dead now. Like compared to the costumes they make.
Yeah, fair enough. To be honest, I never have a problem. I love the makeup, and it is in the context of it being an older movie and being the movie.
Oh yeah,
it is.
I totally get.
But I don't really have that problem with anything. Like I never have. I have a problem with bad special effects. Like bad special effects from a 50s B movie, I'd have a problem with. But good at the time special effects in a 50s B movie, I'm fine. Like I just don't ever have a problem. Like my mind can always watch a movie in the context of it, but I totally get if it does take you out of it. I'm
not saying it's detrimental to the whole film because the film is what it is with the zombies and when it was made. But I feel like filmmaking is advanced so much. Like it's kind of like hard to just watch a zombie being just a basic grey makeup face.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you know, one thing I will say, not the makeup ever, but the only time, because supposedly on set, the people that showed up who would get paid like $1 a day.
Yeah.
I think they got a hat as well or something. But
Take it.
They and a t-shirt maybe. They supposedly actually got no direction at all on how to act as zombies. So some people you see get really creative and cool. Good. Yeah. And other people just seem very like you're a human in zombie makeup, moving like a human. Do you know what I mean? Oh. And that would occasionally take me out of it. But other than that, for me, it's the best zombie movie ever made. One of the best movies ever made. One of my favourite movies of all time. One of the few movies I can watch time and time again and never get bored of it, and kind of wish there was another 40 hours of it I could go watch somewhere. Well, so, yeah, 10 out of 10 for me.
I would, to be honest, Declan, I'm going to give it a solid 8. Now, I'm going to give it...
No, give it an 8 if you want.
Low, to be honest.
No,
it's just simply because it's a great film, but what I said about made in 1978, and it doesn't diminish from the plot or the acting or anything. Like, the setup was perfect in the mall. Like, thinking about that now, you would think like, oh, that's such a easy idea to... Why didn't I think of that in a mall? But it's just simply because of, like, how... I'm not going to say it's dated is the right word, but with the advancements now, I don't give it a 10 at its time. Sorry.
Fair enough.